Hi, everyone. My name is Serena Alsup. I'm a field representative for Congressman Takano. On behalf of the Congressman, we would like to thank you all for joining us this afternoon for our grants writing webinar. So please be patient with us while we wait for people to join us via Zoom. And if you have any questions, make sure that you submit them into the chat box, and we will be sure to answer some of these questions after the presentation. So today we have Vici Nagel from Academy Grassroots Organization and Lorraine Williams from United Way. So right now I'm going to go ahead and invite Vici Nagel from Academy Grassroots Organizations to join us and begin her presentation.
Great, thank you so much, Serena. And I will do my screen share. And are we good? Can everybody see? Give me a thumbs up. Okay, cool. Thank you so much, everybody. I'd say good to see you, but I can't see anybody. So I'm just gonna dive right in. And with Academy for Grassroots Organizations, if you're not familiar with us, we do a lot of training and provide resources for nonprofits in the Inland Empire. And a good bit of the training that we provide is around proposal writing, grant writing, dealing and interacting with funders. So I'm going to give you just a little bit of some of the tips we've garnered over the years from our funding partners. And I know Lorraine's going to talk more about what makes a good proposal, but we're going to look from the funder's perspective on the other side and what can be a hindrance to your proposal getting funded. So here we go. And I'm going to turn my phone on. All of the tips I'm going to give you today are directly from our funding partners. And we've been running every other week a lunch break with them. So if you haven't had an opportunity to connect with some of the funders that have given us all this information, I encourage you to look at our website at academygo.com and sign up for our August 6th. And that'll be with Kathy Paredes from Bank of America. So some of what you'll hear today, you'll be able to hear directly from some of the funding partners. One of the key reasons proposals fail is that the nonprofit who's writing the proposal hasn't really made it fit to the funder that's providing the money. Either they haven't done their grant research to know what exactly that funder provides, and or their mission just really doesn't fit. So say you've got a funder that wants to provide funding for seniors, and really your organization works with youth after school. Not exactly the right fit. So funders are going to look for that up front. As a matter of fact, one of the first things in any application you're going to get asked is, what is your mission? And that's what they're looking for, to make sure your mission actually aligns with the funding they have to give, and that the program you're proposing really does fit within your mission. This last bullet point down here is huge, but it seems odd for me always to talk to a group of adults and tell them one of the key things you need to do is follow directions. But that is a big reason why proposals fail. As a matter of fact, we had Patty Watkins was our speaker, our funder speaker last week. She's with Weingart Foundation, and she ended her 45-minute presentation with exactly this point. She feels so bad that maybe the organization has a great idea, does great work, but they haven't in their proposal given her all of the information that she's asked for. We do a lot of training, as I said, in grant writing, but I'll tell you a little secret. If you can write a cogent sentence, a sentence that people can understand, and you can follow the directions of a grant application, you are going to be so far ahead of all of the other nonprofit people you are competing with. And a couple of tips about how to make sure that you're giving the funder all that they've asked for, because some of the applications are really involved. Create yourself checklists. You know, the application says you need to give your agency budget and your program budget and the list of your board of directors. Well, you make yourself a checklist to make sure that before you hit that submit button, you've given the funder all of those pieces. The other is you want to create a Word document for yourself that's a template for what you're going to write. You don't just sit down with a Word document and start typing things and then submit it online. You want to make sure that you're giving the funder not just the information that they want, that you've answered all the questions, but it really helps if you give them the information in the order that they ask it. So for example, there may be a section that talks about organization background, and under it, they may ask you, tell us about your longevity, tell us about your staff, tell us about your board. As you write, it really helps if you say, and here's a little bit about how long we've been in business, our longevity. Let us tell you about our board. Let us tell you about our staff. So that it's right there in the order, and a funder who's going to review the application doesn't have to hunt and peck and find the information that they're looking for. Another great tip is to use the funder's language. So we have one that we apply to every year, and they always ask for our board approved mission. I think they're trying to make sure that they're getting your actual mission and that you're not just tweaking your mission to make it fit this grant application. But so when I write back to them, I say that in the sentence, our board approved mission is to convene, equip, and guide community leaders. So they know that I've listened to, I've read, I've seen what it is they're actually looking for, and I parrot that back to them. A funder may ask you, what are your intended results? Well, they're looking for your impact. They probably want to know your outcomes, maybe some objectives. But I say that up front. Again, our intended results are, so the funder knows I'm answering the question that they're asking. I'm pretty sure it's Bank of America as an example. They talk all about on their website, even before you get to their grant application, and talk about how they're interested in building vibrant communities. Well, I could answer that back to them and say, we serve the underserved and we help strengthen communities, which would all probably be answering that question. But again, I make sure that I use their language. We build vibrant communities by doing X, Y, Z. So you want to give them their language as much as possible. More reasons. And a lot of these questions, the reason we present them is that proposals from our region sometimes get dinged as being not very good by funders from outside the region. And one of the things that we get dinged on is that the need that we're describing, we're not adequately describing it. And very often in a proposal, the organization will focus on their need. We need a program director because we have so many clients and we just can't see all of the clients that we want to serve. There's just too many people with mental health issues. Well, the funder's not interested in seeing that when they're talking about what is the need that you're going to be addressing, what is the need that this funding is going to be addressing. They want to know what the community need is. They want to see the need expressed in terms of people or the community, not your organization. Another reason that proposals fail is that the whole thing is just not really thought out, or your program doesn't really flow from your budget to what you're asking for, to what you say the need is. And I don't know if Lorraine's going to talk about logic models, but Lorraine is the logic model guru. United Way is. And if you've never taken a logic model course, I would very much suggest that you look at what United Way has to offer. We offer it in part of our Grant Writing Academy. But developing a logic model for your program really helps you determine that what you're proposing is consistent, that the need versus the outcome and what you plan to do in the middle all flow together. And a funder will love to see it if you actually have a logic model. Some proposals promise too much. You know, we're nonprofit people. We want to save the world. So we say, you know, for $5,000, we're going to solve homelessness in our community. Well, funders know that's not realistic. If you're applying to a funder that's a well-staffed, big foundation or corporate funder, chances are you're going to be working with a program officer that knows your community and knows your field of work as well, and if sometimes better than you do. So don't promise too much. They know what's realistic, what's really going to solve an issue. I'll go to this last point down here about making sure that your project design is built on best practices. Say you're dealing with a mental health issue and a funder knows that the best program model right now is one based out of an organization in Minneapolis that has had great results, and people are using this program model throughout the country. They want to know that you know that. They want to know that you know that best practice is out there. And this is not just some intervention that you've made up along the way. Now, that doesn't mean that you can't propose something that's never been done before. But what I suggest is that in your narrative, and you're talking about, well, this is the program that we're providing to solve this need, that you also make it clear that you know the other research that's out there. Here's one. Most of grant writing, I like to say, happens before you're actually sitting down to write. It's the research, it's the gathering your documents, it's creating your template, it's making sure you're answering all the questions. But there is the writing part. And sometimes maybe you've been given the assignment to write and you're not the best person to write the application. You need to be really honest about that. You know, can you write sentences, cogent sentences people will understand? Or should you give your work to somebody else to maybe tweak it and clean it up so that it is much more understandable? One of the funders we had a couple of weeks ago talked about how she's not that diligent about looking at whether grammar is correct or spelling is correct. She said that would definitely not have her put an application beside and not consider funding it. But she did realize that many funders are not like that, that they want to make sure that it's a well-written, consistent language application. If it's poorly written, it's just harder for somebody to understand, even if they are for you and may fund you or be considering funding you anyway. You want to make sure that it is well written. Now, so say you decide, well, you know, I'm not really the one that should write this. I need to hire a professional grant writer, which a lot of us do. But beware that the grant writer is not the only one who knows what's in the application. They could put together something on paper that is just fabulous, that attracts all sorts of attention. But when the funder comes to do a site visit, it becomes pretty clear fast that it's the grant writer that really is the one that understands what's been proposed. In a site visit, you're probably going to be asked to have, obviously, your CEO, program staff for the program you're looking for funding for, maybe board members. You want to make sure that if your CEO or your program staff are not the ones who have actually written the proposal, that they are well versed in what it says. And a piece of that actually goes along with the site visit is this second point here, is making sure that somebody, and preferably your CEO, is really understands your financials, that they can answer questions, detailed questions about your audit, your budgets, your current financial statements, because that's something that funders are going to ask you about and want to make sure that you are well versed in. let's see, one or two more things. One of the good news about our region is we have a Funders Alliance for the Inland Empire. The challenge it can be about that is that all of our funders know each other and they talk to each other. So if they get feedback from other funders about how you've responded to their requests for reports or newsletters, have you spent all the money from your last proposal, you did a good job with your last proposal, they're going to talk to each other, and that feedback is going to be out there. So you want to make sure that you're doing a good job with all of your applications. And I am out of time here, so what did I want to say at the end? I shouldn't say if, when you get turned down for a proposal, make sure you ask for feedback, because that's a great way to start your next proposal. It's a great way to build a relationship with a funder. Not all funders provide feedback on applications, but if they do, make sure you ask for it. And a couple things. I did mention that Kathy Paredes from Bank of America will be speaking August the 6th, free lunch break training, 45 minutes, sign up. I think you'll really enjoy it. We do have a grant writing academy that I think there's another iteration coming up in September. We also do training at on grant research. And I don't know, Debbie, can you unmute or show us your video really quick? Because I want you to wave. If you're interested in training about online grant research, you're going to want to contact Debbie Cannon, debbie@academygo.com. And also a website, if you haven't been there, to ienonprofits.com. There's funding opportunities there. There's job opportunities. You can post job opportunities. They're all free resources. And so ienonprofits.com, don't forget. I think you are going to get a copy of these slides when you're done. So I just want to make sure you've got our contact information in there for both myself and Debbie, who's on our staff. And thank you.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Vicky. So now I'm going to go ahead and request Lorraine Williams from United Way to join us and share her slides. And also, additionally, if you have any questions, please remember to put them in the chat box for us.
Okay. Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Lorraine Williams. I'm the Executive Director of Youth Programs and Community Investments for the newly formed Inland SoCal United Way. And so this is grant writing from the grant reviewer's perspective. Most of you will know that United Way does grant making. And so this is something that, like Debbie was talking about, that we can really look at really a lot of the things that are easy to fix and the what not to do to at least get you past that initial phase. Oops. Sorry, I'm having trouble with my screen. Okay. So I've been reviewing grants and managing our grants process for about 15 years, and some of this advice seems pretty obvious, but unfortunately, like Debbie was mentioning, like Vicky was mentioning, we get a lot of the, we see the same mistakes happening a lot. And as competitive as the grants are, these are, I think, the easy things that you can do. And you know, avoiding some of these mistakes can hopefully get you ahead so that you can compete and receive the grants. So following instructions, I know again that seems obvious, but pay attention to all of the instructions and the details. It can be something that's passed along through the request for proposals for the RFP or instructions, but really actually look at those. And so it's things like formatting the grant as the funder instructed. You know, if they're talking about certain font sizes or certain font types, page limits, you know, do they want, if it's a hard copy, do they want it in a, or an emailed version, do they want it in a Word version versus a PDF, those kinds of things. So pay attention to all those details. Package the grant exactly as it's instructed. I usually do a information session with the potential applicants, and I go through exactly, and everyone laughs and nods their head, but then sure enough, you know, when it comes time to turn them in, they're not packaged how we requested. And it takes a lot of time to go through. So it might be things like, for example, I request, please don't put extra like cover pages or extra folders or binder clips or other things like that, because I have to go undo those and put them, and it literally sometimes takes hours. So again, it's the little things. Pay attention to those instructions. Adhering to the requested response length. Sometimes they'll give a suggestion versus actual limits, so pay attention to that. Attachments, sometimes those are required, sometimes they're optional. Just make sure that if it's required that you are turning in those attachments. If they're optional, they might give you ideas of the kinds of things. So try to attach something that's impactful. Usually not like, here's the flyer for our, here's a flyer for our program or a brochure, because we could look that up and probably find that on the website. We want to see something a little more impactful that we might not find on our own. And then also following the instructions of how you contact the funder. So contact them the way that they are asking to be contacted. If they say email only, then please just do email only. If it's certain hours, you know, or certain days, then just, you know, just respect their request. Answer the questions asked. I know some people think they're answering that. I think especially paying attention to multi-part questions. So a lot of questions will have a general question, then it might have an explanation underneath that that says, make sure you address, you know, and then it'll name certain things. And you might do 4 of the 5 things, but make sure you do all 5 of the things that they asked you to explain or describe. Be thoughtful in your responses. Sometimes, you know, we receive, let's say, we might ask a question and then an applicant might respond and just say no. And we've actually had our volunteer review teams, you know, they'll say something like, we actually feel insulted by that response, like they could have been a little more thoughtful. You can usually come up with something to say, you know, you're taking someone's time to review this, so put a little thought into your responses. And then I always just say, have someone else review it. Don't rely on, oh, well, they know me, they know my agency because we're awesome. Have someone that doesn't maybe know the program review that to see, like, are you really answering the questions? Are you describing the programs and the services and the impact and all those things from someone that doesn't know your program? Don't confuse the reviewer. So whether it be the staff person that's like the program officer, or if it's eventually going to be like United Way uses volunteer review teams, don't do things that are going to make their job more difficult. So something I get sometimes, people will have, will ask a question and they'll say answered in the attached document. That makes me have to stop what I'm doing and go search for a document. So that's an example of something that's going to make me as the reviewer have to do extra work. So answer it in the place that they asked and don't make them have to do something extra. Organize your responses. I feel like sometimes the responses come in more like this was the initial response, but no, there wasn't any editing that happened. So just make sure it's organized. The details do matter. So watch spelling and punctuation and other typos. All those things together start adding up. So just, you know, again, have someone look at that for you and review. Make sure your numbers add up. I know, again, these things sound simple, but it happens more often than you would think. So if you're saying in one section, in a narrative section, that we're going to serve 100 students in our program, and then in your logic model, you might say we're serving 500, I'm going to start having questions as the reviewer, which one is it? Also, if make sure if you're submitting a budget, which usually you have to do a program and an organizational budget, make sure the numbers add up. So just pay attention to those details. And then just bottom line, when there's too many questions and too much confusion in the reviewer's mind, that starts creating doubt in the agency's capacity to administer the grant. So I start wondering, well, if they can't follow the instructions, if they're not paying attention to details, then you start wondering about the quality of the work and can they really be a good steward of those funds. Satisfy the mind and the heart. So you want to provide relevant, current, local data to support the need. There's usually some type of question that's a need statement that's asking you to demonstrate the need. So you want to provide actual data, not just, oh, because our clients tell us, you know, that they need this. You want to actually provide local relevant data. So, and specific, like as specific as you can get. So if it's a food insecurity program, you want to provide specific food insecurity data, not just poverty data, let's say. And you'd want to provide something for your region, at the minimum, your county, or maybe it's a specific school district or city that you're serving versus a national statistic. And then, as Vicky was mentioning, you want to provide actual results data. So you want to provide the outputs, which are the numbers and the things that the numbers you served and the number of services you provided, but you also want to provide the outcomes. So talk about the impact that you made. And if you're able to, yes, attach the logic model and the evaluation plan that goes with that, because then they know you take evaluation seriously. If it's a new program, you can share past results of a different program to demonstrate your agency's track record, because I know sometimes we get that where they say, well, I don't have outcome results, we haven't launched this program yet. So it's fine to show that you do have a track record and that you would be able, that gives the funder confidence in your program. And then in addition to the data that satisfies the donor's mind, you want to provide stories and quotes and testimonials to really bring it back to real people and talk about the real impact. Because sometimes people do one or the other. It's all stories and no data, or it's a lot of data and then it never really brings it back to an individual. So when you can, sprinkle in those quotes and testimonials and stories that really show the impact that your program is making. And that piece is really important. When technical assistance is offered, it's not always offered through the funder, but when it is, definitely try to take them up on that. It's a really great opportunity to begin building a relationship with them. Pay attention to whether it's individual appointments versus like a workshop or a training. I know when I've done these, I offer both. But for example, when I'm doing a workshop, and sometimes those workshops have a specific topic, like we're going to talk about program evaluation, then don't come in thinking, oh, you're going to help me write, you know, some other portion of, you know, we're going to work on my budget. So kind of respect that time. And then also if you make an individual appointment, then be prepared. I've had somebody come in and just say, well, I'm here for my technical assistance appointment, and they didn't have anything, you know, they didn't have a draft version. They didn't have any specific questions. I think they thought I was gonna maybe tell them how to write it. So just kind of be prepared in that way. And also be gracious. Those, again, it's the details and all the interactions add up and they do matter. Remember that usually when technical assistance is offered, this is something that, this is a benefit and something that the funder is doing to try to help you. And so just to be gracious, and be gracious in all your interactions with them. Just the tone and the way that you communicate with them can have a really lasting impression. Again, little things, but they add up. Be on time. So if there's a bidders conference or an information session, if you have a technical assistance appointment, application deadlines, if you are funded, start off on a great note. And, you know, if it's turning in grant agreements or reporting or information orientation meetings, be on time for those. And so just plan for the unexpected. I know with the application deadline, there are some funders that might give you a little, you know, wiggle room, and some that if you're 1 minute past, you know, then they won't accept that. And with all that work that you put in, it would be a shame to not have your proposal considered. So plan for traffic and things to come up. Don't, you know, wait till the last minute, because that's when something always happens. So I think that's it. And if you have any questions, let me know in the chats. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much for that, Lorraine. So now I'm going to invite all of our panelists to join us. Vicky and Lorraine, please unmute yourselves and we can go ahead and move on to the Q&A portion of our webinar. Okay, and with that, we can get started.
Here I am.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so the first question is, what are some good databases of grants to keep as references? So I would go ahead and,
well, I know.
I'd like to mention grants.gov. That's a good database. Sorry, go ahead, Vicky.
And maybe I get Debbie to jump in here. There is a site called Grant Space, and I don't know if it's grantspace.org.net, but it's a site that's hosted by the Foundation Center. And there you can actually find examples of funded applications. So if that's what the asker is asking about. I do see one that might be a similar question. I'm not sure. One is best places to search for grants. And a couple are that ienonprofits.com website I mentioned. That's a list, and it's a searchable database, and it's updated monthly, and it's all funding opportunities that have been curated that are available to Inland Empire nonprofits. So you don't have to wade through every grant opportunity in the world. Another is the Foundation Center, and Debbie does a training on utilizing the Foundation Center's database for searching grant opportunities. So she does those fairly regularly. So you'll want to check out our website, or you can email Debbie directly if you're interested in some grant research training. The state of California has just opened a new website. And again, I don't remember the address for that. Debbie, if you get it, will you put it in either the Q&A box or the chat box? And it's a place where finally you can find all of the grant opportunities, and I think also contract opportunities that are available in the state of, or through the state of California. And they're all in one place that you can search for them, as opposed to having to go to the education department website and the agriculture department website. They're all in one place now. So if Debbie, if you could find that for me, that would be great. Oh, grants.ca.gov. Thank you. So those are some great places to find grant opportunities. Do you have some more, Lorraine?
No, I think you mentioned the ones I was thinking of.
All right, then. So the next question is, do grants ever charge an application fee to apply?
Not that I'm aware of.
I was going to say, not that I'm aware of. I can't say that I know all 180,000 funders in the United States, but I've never run into that. And I would definitely check some other resources if somebody is telling you that if you pay them a fee, you will be able to apply for this grant.
Okay, thank you. So can you ever overwrite when writing a grant, and how do you know when enough is enough?
I'm going to let Lorraine answer this one because
you definitely
that's
can.
a question I get all. Good.
Again, I think.
Go ahead, Lorraine.
Yeah, I think first of all, paying attention to the limits. The funder will usually give you either a specific limit or a suggested limit or an average length, that the response should be. So if you feel like you're going too long, they can kind of give you a hint as to, no, this is a little bit too much. And again, if they offer technical assistance, you can kind of say, like, you can ask, is this an appropriate length, or is this a little bit too much? But I think having, again, someone that doesn't know your program review that I know it's happened to me, but also our reviewers, where you just kind of get to the point where, okay, I'm not even following what this has to do with the question anymore. You're just kind of trying to squeeze in as much as you can. It's always better to be as concise as possible. But if you have the length, you're not limited in length, say what you need to say, but keep it as concise as possible. But yes, you can go over, and I know reviewers have told me, like, I just stopped reading it, which is not what you want them to do. So.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for that. Okay, for our next question, it is, would grant writing processes look different in reference to 501c4 organizations?
And I don't know, Lorraine, does United Way fund C4s?
I don't know that I'm familiar with what the C4 specifically is. We fund different types of 501s. So for example, we do fund like a school district program or a city program or a county program. I'm not sure what the C4.
The C4 is sort of a general public benefit. My advice would be to make sure that the funder funds those. I mean, there are some, and a lot of them, corporations are very strict. It has to be a 501c3. They won't do a C6. They won't do the new hybrid of for-profit, nonprofit. So if the funder accepts your organization, then the process is the same. The application, they're going to ask you the same information. The thing is that there you go, social welfare. Thank you. Couldn't think of the term. So you just need to make sure that funder will fund your C designation.
Okay, thank you. All right, so for our next question, it is, do you have samples of grants that are well written, or maybe where you can find samples?
As I said earlier, that grant space, and again, Debbie, can you tell us, is it grantspace.org.com, whatever? That site that's presented by the Foundation Center. They have all sorts of grantspace.org, she says. funded grants. Another place to find them is through the funder that you're applying to. So some funders will actually share funded applications. And if they don't directly, you can get their 990 IRS tax return. And through that, you can find out other organizations that they have funded. And then I've used that to go back to another organization that has been funded and ask them if they'll share their application. And a lot of times we're helpful people, so a lot of times funders will do that. I mean, applicants will do that. Any other ideas, Lorraine?
I think, like you were saying, a lot of nonprofits will share if there's something, especially if you're a similar type of organization. We don't have like a collection of funded proposals, but I guess it's something we could probably look at doing and get the permission, you know, either fix it so that you can't tell what organization it is, or get the organization's permission to use that, to share it.
Okay, thank you. What advice do you have for new nonprofit organizations that are applying for the first time?
And I'm going to ask Lorraine too to jump in. Will United Way fund a new organization? Because I know there are quite a few of the larger foundations that require you've been in business 2 or 3 years. I know a lot of family foundations sometimes will consider new startup organizations, but I don't know about United Way.
Yeah, we usually have the same, it's the standards of affiliation usually are about 2 to 3 years. There might be, like you were saying, there are certain foundations that want to fund some of these new startup, very grassroots organizations that, you know, to be able to help them build and grow. In the meantime, you know, I think really just doing programs and getting results so that when you are able to apply, that you'll have some type of track record. Even though it's your first time applying, you'll have some type of program results or you know, something to be able to show we've been operating, we've been doing the work.
And Lorraine, will United Way fund a organization or a program that's under a fiscal agent?
Yes.
So that's another way. If you're brand new, even if you already have your 501c3, but you don't even necessarily need to, you can join what is called a fiscal agent. So it might be a local community foundation. It might be another nonprofit that provides similar services to what you provide. And they can apply on your behalf. They're the actual applicant. Your program, your organization is really a program. So there's another way for new organizations, as Lorraine said, to get some track record. So you could potentially get funding under the fiscal agent and be providing your program for a couple of years. And now you've got that track record that some of the other foundations are looking for. And Debbie has just put in the chat a link through Cal Nonprofits about startup organizations. Somebody was asking about setting up a new nonprofit.
Thank you.
I think too with newer organizations, if you are able to apply and the funder doesn't have a restriction, just keep trying and hopefully try to get feedback. There are many funders that it's an online application process. It's fairly simple. It's not a huge investment of time. And even though, you know, the chances of being funded might be slim, the experience is worth a lot. And the more you write and the more you submit, you're getting experience every time. And so that's really important too.
All right. Can you tell us more about the Funders Alliance?
You want to jump in, Lorraine?
I personally haven't been involved United Way is, but if you want to give a little more background, that would be great.
It's a group of funders. So they're foundations, they're United Ways, they're First Fives, they're foundations. There's probably close to 30 in this alliance now, and they come together regularly because they are foundations, funders that fund in this region. So it's not the Ford Foundation, it's not the San Francisco Community Foundation. These are all organizations that fund in this region. Debbie's put their website, they have a brand new website, iefunders.org. And they talk, their key thing that they work on is how to attract other funders to our region. So they're great advocates for the nonprofits in the Inland Empire. But again, they all know each other very personally. And so hopefully if you've done a very good job in your grant application, they talk to each other for good or for ill. And actually, one of the things we have found is that sometimes you may apply to a funder and they may not be quite the right fit, but because they have all of these other relationships, if they really like what you're about, but maybe just their foundation doesn't provide that sort of funding, they can recommend you to their funder colleagues. So it's really a great benefit to our region. And it's iefunders.org. You'll see the list of them there.
Thank you. Is there a particular time of the year that one has to submit a grant, or are applications due year-round?
Always. What's your cycle, Lorraine?
Well, we're kind of in a strange time right now, but typically it was in the spring. I think for a lot, it still is the grant season because then the process would be completed by the start of the new fiscal year. So for July 1st. So typically, I know a lot of people and a lot of my grant writer friends are saying it's grant season, you know, usually in the spring, but they're year round. It just depends on the funder.
Right. I think you're right. I think we do more of ours as bulk, say in the spring, but so for example, Bank of America, they have 2 funding cycles. One's way early in the year, like January, I don't know whether it's January, February, or just 1 month. They've got a second cycle that is like the beginning of the summer. San Manuel Band of Mission Indians, they are one of our few local funders, and their application period opens early in the year, like February through April. And as Lorraine said, that's all what we know or did know before. I do know that some of our funders have changed their cycle just particularly for this year. So it really all boils down with, first you need to find the funders that you think will want to fund what you do. And then on their website, it's really easy to find out what their cycle is.
Thank you for that. Do you need to complete a business license before applying for a grant?
Well, most 501c3s are already a corporation, unless you're working under a fiscal agent who themselves would be a corporation of some kind. They might be an LLC. Chances are they're a full corporation. Lorraine, do you get many applicants that aren't already incorporated?
No.
Okay, thank you. For our next question. Just one moment, please. I've always wanted to join and create a nonprofit. Where would I begin to research and learn/join and eventually create a nonprofit for the ideas I have?
I think Debbie put, if you go up in the chat, there's one link to that Cal Nonprofits, an article. It's a step-by-step on how to start a California nonprofit. So that's a really good place to start. They've got all the steps there that you need to consider. I also suggest that before you start a nonprofit, you really do think about joining under a potentially like a community foundation or a fiscal agent of some kind. You know, you may not need to start a nonprofit to do what it is you want to accomplish in the community. Maybe what you have is just a really great program or service idea, and chances are that's what you want to do. You want to provide help to people in the community of some kind. Because there's a whole lot to running a nonprofit. There's the whole business side that a lot of times people think, well, I'm going to start a nonprofit because I want to help people. And then they realize there's like 4 or 5 different government reports that are due every year. You have to have a board of directors who now get to tell you, who started this great organization, what to do. So I would suggest that before you start one, check out the resources like at Cal Nonprofits, and then think about, is there a way to provide the service you want to provide another way? And if you'd like to get connected with somebody that may do what you do, both I would think through United Way and through our organization, you know, our reach is into the thousands of people in the region that are providing services. So I think we could probably connect you with some good potential partners.
I would also say, if you've never actually worked like day-to-day in operations of a nonprofit, you know, try an internship or volunteer long-term with someone that's doing what you know, kind of in the area. If you're, the area you want to get into is food insecurity and hunger programs, then, you know, you would maybe volunteer or do an internship with your local food pantry or food bank, and then you really see what the day-to-day is, and that might kind of change your mind. Either, oh, I want to join this existing nonprofit, or yes, what I want to do is completely different and I do need to start my own. So
Thumbs up, that's great.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so this will be our last question. How has the current COVID-19 environment impacted availability of grant funds?
Well, I know through United Way, there was some additional funding this year, wasn't there, Lorraine?
yeah, I think the biggest thing is the funding has been specific to COVID-19 and relief for the community. And I know a lot of our existing, like, so we don't only provide grants, but we also run programs that we write and receive grants for. And a lot of our funders came, you know, we were able to communicate and talk to them about, here's how things have shifted for us, and they were able to adapt the funding. And that piece has been really great because they were flexible and they understand the changes in the environment. I know for us specifically, this most recent round of funding that we were able to do was through an anonymous donor that was specific to COVID relief in the Inland Empire. So we funded specifically organizations that were responding to the need in the community, and we're meeting some of the most critical needs in the community. So a lot of things like food, you know, food, counseling, basic needs, you know, housing, those kinds of things were the things that got funded.
And I do know, and it's different for every funder. So it's hard to give you a blanket response of how it's affected. You know, we had a few funders that actually were businesses that discontinued their funding this year because their businesses were affected. So they didn't have the monies to make grants. Some funders have moved their funding primarily to COVID response in particular. So things like healthcare and, like Lorraine said, food insecurity. I would say that all of them that we've applied with this year and spoken with want to know what you're doing and what's happening with your organization regarding COVID-19. So whatever application you're submitting, even if it doesn't ask you, well, how are you responding? Somewhere in that, I would suggest that you make a point of, this is how the COVID-19 is affecting our organization. This is how it's affecting our community. Here's our response, how we're being proactive. So I don't think, we've seen some reduction in funding, but mostly that's been because, as I said, funders are moving some of their money, particularly to COVID-19 response.
Okay. With that, thank you everyone so much for joining us today. Our office hopes that this information was helpful. If you want to receive our grants newsletter, you can go to takano.house.gov for any additional information. And with that, I would like to thank both of our guests today for taking the time to do this webinar with us. And we hope you have a good rest of your evening.
Thank you, Serena. Good to see you, Lorraine.
Good to see you too.
Goodbye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.